There are moments in time that Babylon cannot erase. Sacred days when the veil is lifted and Jah's light shines upon his people. These are not empty holidays of the world, but holy days of prophecy, where history meets destiny and spirit conquers flesh. In the heartbeat of the drum, in the rising of the sun, Rastafari remembers, and I celebrate the days Jah has set apart, the days that carry the power of Zion. April 21st, 1966, stands as one of the most powerful and unforgettable moments in the story of Rastafari. On that day, the King of Kings, Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia, set foot in Jamaica, a land that had long been crying out for redemption, a people who had been mocked, scorned, and rejected for holding firm to the prophecy that the Ethiopian monarch was the living God in flesh. To the eyes of Babylon, this was nothing more than a political visit. But to the Rastas, it was a sacred confirmation, a thunderclap from the heavens that Jah had not abandoned his people. From early morning, the streets of Kingston overflowed. Reports speak of over 100,000 people gathering, some climbing onto trees, fences, and rooftops just to catch a glimpse of the Lion of Judah. The air was thick with the scent of ganja smoke, the beating of drums, and the chanting of psalms. Yet Babylon looked on in confusion, not understanding what was really happening. This was no ordinary reception. It was a grounation, a spiritual grounding of the people in the presence of Jah. The weather itself testified. Heavy rains had poured down all day, soaking the crowd, until the moment Haile Selassie's plane landed. As he descended, the skies cleared, the rain stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds. For the Rastaman, this was not coincidence. This was prophecy moving before their very eyes. Just as Psalm 68 verse 31 had declared, "Princes shall come out of Egypt. Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto God." In that moment, Ethiopia stretched forth her hand to Jamaica, and the people knew the faith of Rastafari was true. The scenes that followed were unforgettable. Men and women bowed before the emperor, some crying out in tongues, others pressing forward to touch his garment. There were reports of Babylon police struggling to control the sea of humanity, but no violence broke out. The presence of Selassie brought order, awe, and reverence. Though he did not address the people publicly at the airport, his very presence was the sermon. The Rastaman did not need speeches, for the king's footsteps on Jamaican soil were louder than words. What followed in the days of Selassie's visit was equally significant. He met with government officials, church leaders, and the Rastafari elders. The message he carried was one of peace, unity, and development. Some expected him to declare himself openly as God, but Selassie, in his divine humility, allowed the people to see with spiritual eyes rather than carnal reasoning. He presented himself as servant, but the Rasta saw in him the fulfillment of prophecy, the Davidic king, the conquering lion, the return of Christ in kingly character. From that day on, April 21st became Grounation Day, one of the holiest celebrations in Rastafari Livity. The word Grounation itself comes from grounding, a spiritual connection to the earth, to roots, and to truth. To ground oneself is to be in tune with Jah, to stand firm against Babylon, and to be rooted in the eternal. Grounation Day is not just about remembering an event of the past, but about celebrating the living covenant between Jah and his chosen people. The rituals of the day reflect this spirit. Across Jamaica and in Rastafari communities worldwide, brethren and sistren gather in Nyabinghi circles. The heartbeat drum begins, slow and steady, carrying the rhythm of life. Chanting rises, psalms are recited, and the name of Jah resounds. The herb is passed, not for recreation but for meditation, opening the mind to higher reasoning. Stories are told of the 1966 visit. Elders share testimonies, and the younger ones are reminded that they carry the torch of the faith forward. It is a day of joy, of thanksgiving, and of liberation. But Grounation Day is more than a celebration, it is a challenge. It calls every Rasta to remember that faith without works is dead. The emperor's visit was not just a sign of validation, it was also a call to rise up, to build, to educate, and to unify. Haile Selassie himself urged education and progress as the tools of liberation. He reminded the people that true freedom is not just escape from Babylon's chains, but the construction of Zion within the mind, the heart, and the community. In this way, Grounation Day stands as a living prophecy. Every year it reminds I that Jah is not distant. He is present, moving in history, speaking through signs and wonders. The rains that stopped in 1966 still speak today. They tell us that when the King steps into the lives of his people, the storms must cease, and the sun must shine again. Babylon may scoff, may reduce it to a footnote in their books, but Rastafari knows better. This was the day the heavens touched the earth in Jamaica. This was the day prophecy kissed reality. And so, when the Nyabinghi drums sound on April 21st, they are not mere music. They are echoes of that sacred day, when Jah revealed himself through the King of Kings. Grounation Day is a cornerstone of Rastafari identity, proof that Jah is alive, prophecy is real, and Zion is not just a dream, but a living destiny unfolding before our very eyes. Coronation Day, November 2nd. If Grounation Day is the confirmation, then Coronation Day is the foundation. On November 2nd, 1930, prophecy moved out of the pages of Scripture and stood before the eyes of the world. On that day in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Rastafari Makonnen was crowned Emperor Haile Selassie, taking the ancient and majestic titles: King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Conquering Lion of the Tribe of Judah, Elect of God, Defender of the Faith. These were not words chosen by men in Babylon's parliament. They were titles echoing straight out of the book of Revelation. For the Rastaman, this was no accident. This was divine design. Ethiopia, the oldest independent African nation, became the stage for a coronation that shook both the colonial world and the spiritual realm. Leaders from across the globe, from Europe to the Middle East, gathered in Ethiopia to witness the crowning of the young emperor. In the midst of this global audience, Ethiopia declared to the world that its monarch carried the authority of the Solomonic dynasty, a direct descendant of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The royal bloodline stretched across the ages, linking Ethiopia to the biblical throne of David. And so, when Rastafari received his crown, the faithful remembered the prophecy in Revelation 19 verse 16. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. They remembered Revelation 5 verse 5. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, hath prevailed. These verses, hidden in plain sight for centuries, suddenly lived again in the coronation of Haile Selassie. While Babylon looked on with political eyes, seeing just another royal ceremony, the Rastaman saw the manifestation of Christ returned in kingly character. For the downtrodden and oppressed black masses across the world, this day was a light in a time of darkness. Remember, the 1930s were heavy years. Colonial rule still strangled Africa, Jim Crow segregation crushed African descendants in America, and economic depression gnawed at the poor worldwide. Yet here came news of a black king, crowned with ancient authority, holding titles that Babylon dared to claim for their own monarchs. This was the vindication Marcus Garvey had foretold. Look to Africa, when a black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is near. When Haile Selassie was crowned, the Rastaman knew Garvey's words were true. Deliverance was no longer a distant hope, it was here. Coronation Day became a sacred marker in time, not just for Ethiopia, but for the global diaspora. In Jamaica, where poverty and Babylon oppression weighed heavily, news of the crowning reached the hills and ghettos. The humble Rastaman, mocked for his locks and his livity, now had living proof that prophecy was fulfilled. The king was crowned, and the faith of Rastafari was vindicated. It was as though Jah himself had sent a sign that Zion was real and Babylon's days were numbered. Since then, every November 2nd is honored as one of the holiest days in the Rastafari calendar. It is a time of deep reverence, reflection, and thanksgiving. Gatherings are held where Nyabinghi drums sound through the night, psalms are chanted, and the story of the coronation is retold to every generation. Unlike Babylon's hollow holidays of shopping and vanity, Coronation Day is filled with meaning, connecting heaven and earth through the crowning of Jah's chosen king. The practices vary among Rasta mansions, but the spirit is the same. Some observe fasting and prayer leading up to the day, grounding themselves in humility and meditation. Others hold long Nyabinghi sessions, where the rhythm of the heartbeat drum becomes a river of praise flowing to Zion. Chanting rises like incense, words of life that affirm Jah's kingship and the faith of his people. The herb is used as sacrament, not for escape, but for opening higher reasonings about the meaning of kingship, justice, and liberation. Coronation Day is also a time of education. Elders take the opportunity to reason with the youth about the significance of Haile Selassie's reign. They speak about his role as a defender of African independence, his resistance to fascism when Mussolini invaded Ethiopia, his speeches at the League of Nations and the United Nations, where he reminded the world of justice, peace, and the rights of all humanity. The youth are taught that Coronation Day is not only about prophecy, but also about responsibility. If Haile Selassie stood as a king of righteousness in a world of corruption, then the Rastaman and Rastawoman must also live righteously in Babylon's midst. Ultimately, Coronation Day is not just a memory of something that happened in 1930. It is a living reminder that Jah rules. It is a testimony that prophecy is not dead, that the words of Scripture still breathe life when read with spiritual eyes. It is a challenge to Babylon, showing that no matter how it tries to twist history, the truth of Zion cannot be erased. When Rastafari celebrates November 2nd, it is not simply looking backward, it is proclaiming to the world that the King still reigns, and his kingdom is everlasting. So the drums beat, the chants rise, and the faithful lift their voices. Glory to the King of Kings, Haile Selassie I, Jah Rastafari. Coronation Day remains a cornerstone of Rastafari Livity, a holy day that binds prophecy, history, and the eternal presence of Jah in one mighty celebration. Earthstrongs of Haile Selassie I, Marcus Garvey, and Empress Menen. In Rastafari tradition, a birthday is not a shallow celebration of self with cakes and vanity. Instead, it is called an Earthstrong, a spiritual day of grounding, renewal, and thanksgiving. It is a time to give praises for life, not just the passing of years, but the blessing of existence itself, rooted in Jah. Earthstrongs are not about ego, but about acknowledging the divine breath that sustains I and I. For this reason, the Earthstrongs of great figures like Haile Selassie I, Marcus Garvey, and Empress Menen carry special power in the Rastafari calendar. They are moments to honor the works of these chosen ones, to learn from their example, and to strengthen the livity of the community. Haile Selassie I, July 23rd. On July 23, 1892, in the small town of Ejirsagoro, Ethiopia, a child was born who would later be crowned as Haile Selassie I, the King of Kings. For Rastafari, this is not just a historical birthday, but the manifestation of prophecy. The coming of this child was foretold by seers and confirmed by Scripture. His lineage traced back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, making him heir to the throne of David. When Rastafari celebrates the Earthstrong of Haile Selassie, it is not mere memory. It is recognition of Jah's presence on earth, taking flesh to guide his people. On this day, Nyabingi drumming often fills the night sky. Psalms are read, especially those that speak of kingship, justice, and divine protection. The faithful chant the titles of the emperor, reminding themselves of his mission as defender of the faith and father of the African nation. It is a day of renewal, when the community reflects on Selassie's teachings of education, unity, and spiritual strength. His Earthstrong is seen as a gift to the world, a reminder that Jah does not forget his people, even in their captivity. Marcus Garvey, August 17th. If Haile Selassie I is the king, then Marcus Garvey is the prophet who pointed the way. Born on August 17, 1887, in Jamaica, Garvey carried the voice of liberation to a world drowning in Babylon's lies. He taught that Black people must look to Africa for redemption, that self-reliance, unity, and pride were the keys to breaking chains. Long before Selassie was crowned, Garvey proclaimed, "Look to Africa, when a Black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is near." These words became the foundation of Rastafari faith. Rastas celebrate Garvey's Earthstrong with fiery reasoning, reading his speeches and reflecting on his call for African redemption. He is honored as a Moses-like figure, a man sent to awaken the sleeping sons and daughters of slavery. His Earthstrong is a day to remind the youth of their responsibility to continue the struggle for liberation, to resist Babylon's illusions, and to keep their eyes fixed on Zion. To celebrate Garvey is to celebrate prophecy, for his words cleared the path for the recognition of Haile Selassie as the living God. Empress Menen, March 25th. The role of woman in Rastafari is not secondary. Just as there is the king, there is also the queen. Empress Menen, the beloved wife of Haile Selassie I, was born on March 25, 1891. She is honored as a mother of the nation, a model of dignity, virtue, and strength. To the Rastaman, she is the balance to the emperor, the symbol of the divine feminine that completes the order of creation. Empress Menen's Earthstrong is celebrated with respect and reverence. Rasta women, in particular, look to her as an example of queenly character, faith, and service. She worked tirelessly for the poor, built schools and churches, and stood as a rock of support for the emperor throughout his reign. Her legacy is one of humility, wisdom, and strength, the qualities of a true empress. On her Earthstrong, brethren and sistren reason on the importance of family, respect for women, and the divine balance of male and female in Rastafari Livity. The meaning of Earthstrong. Together, these Earthstrongs form pillars in the Rasta calendar. Each one calls the people to reflect, to learn, and to live more consciously. Haile Selassie's Earthstrong reminds I of divine kingship and Jah's living presence. Garvey's Earthstrong reminds I of the prophetic voice that calls for liberation and unity. Empress Menen's Earthstrong reminds I of balance, strength, and the sacred role of woman. The way Rastafari celebrates these days is far from Babylon's vanity. There are no candles of pride, no gifts of materialism. Instead, there is fasting, prayer, drumming, chanting, and reasoning. The youth are taught history, elders share wisdom, and the community grows in strength. The celebration is not about lifting up man above man, but about honoring the works of Jah through his chosen vessels. In truth, Earthstrongs and Rastafari are like spiritual checkpoints. They ground the community in memory and meaning, keeping the faith alive in a world that seeks to drown it out. Each time the day comes around, it is like a circle, a cycle of renewal, reminding I that life itself is a gift from Jah, and that those who walked before us left markers of light on the path to Zion. Next is Ethiopian Christmas, January 7th. When Babylon celebrates Christmas, it is a season of glitter, consumerism, and distraction. The streets glow with lights, the stores overflow with goods, and people spend more than they have chasing vanity. Yet for Rastafari, the true spirit of Christ's birth is not found in Babylon's version of December 25th. Instead, the Rastaman and Rastawoman look to Ethiopia, the spiritual homeland, where the ancient calendar keeps a different rhythm. According to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, Christmas, called Jinnah, is celebrated on January 7th. For Rastafari, this is the true Christmas, stripped of Babylon's corruption and closer to the heart of divine order. The celebration of Ethiopian Christmas is not about presents under a tree, but about the birth of divine light into the world. It is a day to meditate on the coming of Yahshua, Jesus Christ, whom Rasta identifies as a manifestation of Jah. But unlike the doctrine of Babylon that locks Christ into a distant past, Rastafari sees the Christ spirit as living, ever-present, and revealed again in the kingly character of Haile Selassie. Ethiopian Christmas is therefore not just about the birth of the child in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, but about the continual birth of light, truth, and righteousness in every generation. Historically, Ethiopia has celebrated Christmas with fasting, prayer, and spiritual gathering. The faithful rise early, clad in white, and attend church services that last through the night. The liturgy is ancient, filled with chants and incense, echoing through stone churches that have stood for centuries. For the Rasta, this connection to Ethiopia is deeply symbolic. It is proof that Africa, not Europe, is the true custodian of divine tradition. Babylon may have twisted and commercialized the message, but Ethiopia has preserved the root. In the Rastafari Livity, Ethiopian Christmas is honored with Nyabingi gatherings, where the heartbeat drum carries the vibration of life. Psalms are chanted, elders reason about the meaning of light conquering darkness, and the community reflects on the importance of living in the spirit of Christ, humility, justice, and love for one another. Some Rastas observe fasting before the day, purifying the body and spirit, just as Ethiopians do in preparation for Jannah. Others take the opportunity to gather as families, not to indulge in materialism, but to give thanks for the gift of life and to renew their commitment to Jah's Livity. One of the most profound aspects of Ethiopian Christmas for Rastafari is the rejection of Babylon's timeline. To celebrate on January 7th is to step outside of Babylon's system and to align with an ancient African rhythm of time. It is an act of spiritual rebellion, declaring that I do not follow Babylon's calendar, Babylon's holidays, or Babylon's illusions. Instead, Rastafari looks to Ethiopia, the land of Zion, for guidance. This act alone makes the day holy, for it is a conscious refusal to be trapped in Babylon's world of illusion. Ethiopian Christmas also carries prophetic weight. The birth of light in the middle of winter symbolizes hope in times of darkness. Just as Yahshua was born under humble conditions, bringing salvation not through power but through spirit, Rastafari teaches that truth often comes in simplicity, not in Babylon's grand display. The child of Bethlehem is mirrored in the humble birth of Tafari Makoan in Ejirsagoro, who later revealed himself as Haile Selassie. The pattern of divine birth repeats, showing that Jah enters history again and again to guide his people. For the Rasta youth, Ethiopian Christmas is a teaching moment. Elders remind them that while Babylon drowns itself in spending and drunkenness in December, Rastafari waits patiently for the true holy day. They are taught that light cannot be bought, that truth does not come wrapped in paper, and that the greatest gift Jah gives is life itself. This grounding helps the youth resist Babylon's temptations and see beyond the illusions that enslave so many. Thus, January 7th becomes more than a date. It is a spiritual symbol. It is the reminder that Jah's order is not Babylon's order. It is the celebration of light conquering darkness, truth defeating lies, and righteousness standing firm against corruption. Every chant, every drumbeat, every prayer lifted on Ethiopian Christmas carries this energy of renewal. So when the sun rises on January 7th, Rastafari does not look to malls or sales, but to Zion. The community gathers, the drums beat, the psalms rise, and the people rejoice. For unto us light has come, and darkness cannot overcome it. Ethiopian Christmas is not just the memory of Bethlehem, but the living testimony that Jah still enters the world, still shines his light, and still walks with his people. Lastly, Earthstrongs of His Majesty and Empress Menen. In the Livity of Rastafari, a birthday is never a mere celebration of age. It is called an Earthstrong, a recognition of the day when a soul entered this world on a divine mission. And among all Earthstrongs, none carry more reverence than those of Emperor Haile Selassie I and Empress Menen, the king and queen of Ethiopia, the father and mother of the Rastafari movement. Every year on July 23rd, Rastas across the earth remember the birth of His Imperial Majesty. This is not just the commemoration of a man, it is the acknowledgement of Jah stepping into history. Born in 1892, Tafari Makoan entered the world with a destiny written long before his first breath. The line of Solomon and Sheba flowed through his veins, and the prophecy of the Lion of Judah pointed directly to him. When Rastas gather to celebrate his Earthstrong, they do so with gratitude, knowing that his life was not random but divine, a life that carried the power to inspire nations, overthrow lies, and reveal the face of the Almighty in an African king. The Earthstrong of Selassie is a time for reflection, chanting, and prayer. It is the moment to ask, what have I done with the gift of life Jah has given me? Just as His Majesty carried his crown with humility, strength, and wisdom, so must I carry our responsibilities. To celebrate his Earthstrong is not only to sing songs and beat drums, it is to recommit to the path of truth and righteousness. His life becomes a mirror for our own, calling us higher, deeper, and closer to Zion. Yet no king reigns in fullness without his queen, and Rastafari honors this balance through the Earthstrong of Empress Menen, celebrated on March 25th. Too often the world forgets the power of the feminine in divine order, but Rastas know better. Empress Menen is not merely remembered as the wife of Haile Selassie. She is revered as the perfect example of the African queen, strong, humble, nurturing, and unwavering in her faith. She stood beside His Majesty not as a shadow, but as a light of her own, a mother to the nation, and a symbol of balance in Jah's creation. On Empress Menen's Earthstrong, the daughters of Zion find inspiration in her dignity, her modesty, and her courage. The sons, too, look to her as the mother figure of the movement, teaching that true strength is not in dominance, but in harmony. She is the embodiment of the Proverbs 31 woman, clothed in honor, wisdom, and compassion. For Rastas, to celebrate her Earthstrong is to celebrate the feminine essence of Jah himself, the side of divinity that nurtures and gives life. Together, the Earthstrongs of Selassie and Menen remind the Rastafari community of a sacred truth. Jah is both father and mother, strength and tenderness, lion and lioness. To honor these days is to restore balance in a world gone astray, a Babylon that exalts materialism and forgets the sacred order of family, respect, and unity. When the Nyabangi drums echo on July 23rd and March 25th, they carry not only rhythm but prophecy, not only sound but remembrance that Zion is both kingly and queenly. These Earthstrongs are not private observances but global gatherings. From Shashamane in Ethiopia to the hills of Jamaica, from London to Trinidad, from New York to Nairobi, the children of Rastafari chant down Babylon and lift up Zion. Scriptures are read, psalms are sung, the holy herb is burned, and the teachings of His and Her Majesty are reasoned upon. These are days of family, of teaching the youth, of keeping the fire alive from generation to generation. And so, when we speak of the holy days of Rastafari, we cannot end without these Earthstrongs. They are not about age, but about eternal life, not about the past, but about the present spirit that continues to guide I and I. They remind us that to honor the King and the Queen is to honor Jah within ourselves, to live upright, and to walk the narrow path that leads away from Babylon and into Zion. My family, as you hear these words, don't just let them pass by. Take these holy days into your own life. Mark them on your calendar, gather with your people, and celebrate the light of Rastafari. And if this message resonates in your spirit, subscribe and stay with us as we continue to reason, to learn, and to grow. For every Earthstrong of His and Her Majesty is a call to rise. Rise in faith, rise in unity, rise in consciousness.